video series. This one is kind of going to be fun for me, hopefully fun for you as well. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about what makes a good all-wheel drive system. Now, if you just heard my introduction, you heard Peter from Brantford Kia, and you might like tune me out right away because you might think, hey, I'm only going to talk about Kia. And it's true. Kia has a great all-wheel drive system. I'm going to talk about Kia, but we do these things live, so you can talk about all the all-wheel drive systems you want. I'm going to talk about what makes a good all-wheel drive system, and we're going to talk about why Kias are among the leaders. And that's just not just my opinion. As you watch this video, you'll probably be suggested other videos, and they will show you again and again how Kia is among the leaders in all-wheel drive systems. So that's pretty cool, and it really depends on what you're looking for, what you need in a car. But we're going to talk in the next little while. We're going to talk about the Kia Seltos, Kia K5, Kia Telluride, and actually the Sportage, which is not here, the Sorento, which is not here. All of those are all-wheel drive vehicles. We'll also talk real briefly about the Kia Stinger because it's got a different all-wheel drive system again. They're all a little bit different. They all work in different ways, and we're going to talk about what you should look for in a good all-wheel drive system and what ours offer and why that matters and why that makes a difference. It's kind of going to be a full in-depth thing. Sometimes my regular viewers, they call this Kia School. So welcome to Kia School. All right, what we do is we wait till about the 3-minute mark to get into the content. So if you're not watching live with us, feel free to skip to that 3-minute mark. We're just going to let some of our regulars jump on. And if you want to learn how to watch or how to join us live at 2 o'clock, let me show you how to do that right now. Jump across over here. Here's my computer. And if you just go to your computer, your phone, your tablet, whatever you can watch YouTube on, head over to Brantford Kia. So go to YouTube, search for Brantford Kia. You're going to find us. We're pretty easy to find. Hit the refresh button exactly at 2 o'clock, which it just turned to 2:01 on my computer. One of two things is going to happen. Usually, you're going to see right here our live video. It has that little red live tab. If you don't see it there, just click the videos tab. If it's a weekday and it's not a holiday here, we're going to be doing a live video at 2 o'clock. Just hit this videos tab right here, and you'll find it as the very first video. So once you see that live video, click it. You might have to watch an ad with me. Hey, you don't. Let me just mute my computer there. There we go. The other thing I didn't do today is I didn't put it on the Apple TV. What I do is I take your comments, and I can see them across the room a little bit better if I throw it on the TV over there. And did I do it right? Oh, there we go. Okay, so it is working now. So I can now see you across the room a little bit. So like I said, Kia School, we're going to take a quick look at what we've got in the bay here. The intent of this video is to talk about winter driving. It snowed a little bit here this morning. Not a lot, but a little bit. And I was kind of waiting for the first snowfall to talk about our all-wheel drive system, and that's what we're going to do today. So again, we're about 15 seconds away from that 3-minute mark. No real news to break. I did not get my K5 GT line in the Wolf Gray yet. As soon as that shows up, hopefully by Monday or Tuesday or so, we'll get it in here and we'll do that. So 3 minutes is just about here. Okay. All right, 3 minutes is in, so one comment I want to address. They said, why not watch the ads and make yourself some money? I feel like if I watch my ads while you guys are here with me, I don't feel like that's going to help me at all. So I'll sacrifice that little tiny bit of ad space, hoping that you guys can watch some ads that are interesting to you guys. All right, so here we go. What we've got here is the Kia Seltos. This is a 2021 Kia Seltos EX Premium, 2021 Kia K5 EX, and we have the 2021 Kia Telluride SX. All of these have all-wheel drive systems. Spoiler alert, these two are what they call basically the same. Now, I'm going to go with they're exactly the same, but there are some, I guess, differences of wheelbase, that kind of thing. There is different powertrains in these two vehicles. But we'll talk about, there is actually a slight difference, and we'll talk about that as well. We also have the Kia Sportage and the Kia Sorento, which are not here, and the Kia Stinger. So we're going to talk about all-wheel drive systems in the context of best all-weather systems and what you want to look for, what you don't want to look for, what you want to get. Real briefly, the Kia Stinger, I don't think it's out here. Yeah. So the Kia Stinger that we have as well is an all-wheel drive Stinger, and it's only all-wheel drive in Canada. And that all-wheel drive system is a rear-wheel drive biased vehicle. And what that means is the car is primarily rear-wheel drive. So when you put it in sport mode on the Kia Stinger, you're going to get 80% of the power to the rear wheels. So it is a rear-wheel drive car that can move power forward. Every car you see here today in the bay is a front-wheel drive car that can move power backwards to the rear wheels. So that's kind of the difference. The Stinger is definitely a performance car. The all-wheel drive system works well in snow. It can be transferred 50-50 power. It is a very good sports car in the snow. However, we're just not going to talk about that car as much right now in this video because these are our mainstream cars. This is the systems you want to look for. So Before I go too far into the system of all-wheel drive, I want to talk about a couple things that people forget when we're talking about all-weather traction. So let's just deal with the winter tire thing. If you buy a car and you want the best all-wheel drive traction, you should buy winter tires. Winter tires are no longer called snow tires. It's not just a marketing gimmick. The winter tires, excuse me, winter tires used to have a really aggressive tread. That's what gave you good grip in snow, but they were noisy, they were inefficient. There was a whole bunch of issues with them as well. Now, what we have is winter tires, and the big advancement in the last number of years in winter tires is the rubber compound. Below 7 degrees is the number that everybody seems to use. They become more grippy on dry pavement than the all seasons or summer tires or whatever else you have. So that 7 degree mark is really what you're looking for to switch to your all weather or sorry your snow tires, what we call winter tires, because it's not about snow anymore. It's about the cool weather. That rubber doesn't become hard and plasticky, and that's what you should look for. So um, do that if your commute to and from work is around that 7 degree or less. You will gain traction at that point with your winter tires. So as we move through, we're going to talk about one more thing when it comes to winter tires. Wow, this car got some decorations from the birds. I did not realize that. Oops. Anyways, real quickly, the biggest frustration I have is people avoiding winter tires on any of our cars is what's the biggest change in cars lately is wheel speed sensors. Those have been in around for a while for ABS brakes. As long as there's been ABS brakes, it senses the speed of the wheel. But the level of computerization, the level of technology in those wheel speed sensors or attached to those wheel speed sensors is unbelievably more advanced than it used to be. They can read the differences in tire speeds to a much more precise region. Things like vehicle stability control, electronic stability control, traction control, the ABS brakes, the all-wheel drive system. All kinds of systems are tied into those wheel speed things. And if you give any modern car a little bit extra traction, all of those systems will work tremendously. If you give them very little traction, none of those things that you've paid for, none of those computer systems that you've paid for, those safety features you paid for, are going to do you a whole lot of good. They all rely on at least a little bit of traction. So throwing winter tires on cars makes a massive difference as far as emergency handling. And I've driven the Celtos here in the snow hard. We actually, before the car came out, we got to go to near the Toronto airport, take them around in an empty parking lot on a snowy parking lot. It had winter tires on that car, and this car is excellent in the snow. So here we go. What makes a good all-wheel drive system? Well, the old systems of SUVs, they you always want to have a front bias all-wheel drive system when it's a snow system. Not always, but it's just better. And what you used to have is the front tires would have to lose traction before they sent power to the rear tires. None of these cars have that system. So what would happen is your front tires would lose traction. It was called a slip and grip system. They would have to slip before the rear wheels would grip. And what happens is oftentimes when you lose traction, you're going around a corner. So imagine this car is going around a corner, the front wheels lose traction. Well, if you've driven in snow, you know that you start to slide. And as you start to slide, you have rear wheels that then are pushing you. They gain traction and now they're pushing you even more off track. So if you have a system where your front wheels have to lose traction and your rear wheels have to gain traction, you're going to have an issue. So what you want is a system that is always at least partially active at all times. So these two cars, actually every one of these cars, is 95% front wheel drive and 5% rear wheel drive all the time. Now they say that as a sort of shock absorber of the system. If you had to kick in all wheel drive, you would have that enhancement that kick in, and that would be it would just be a little bit rougher transition. So they always are full all wheel drive, but 95% in the front, 5% in the rear. What you have with Kia system is when you start driving from a stop, all four wheels are going to push. They can move as much as 50% of torque to the rear wheels, but when they're stopped, you're not going to start with 95.5. You're going to start with a percentage that is a significant amount of percentage to the rear wheel. It can move up to 50% of the power to the rear wheel. That's what you want to look for. You want to look for not a reactive system, a system that waits for trouble. You want to look for a proactive system, a system that gives you power where you need it and then backs off the power as it maintains traction. So in other words, it's going to start in all-wheel drive. it's going to say, hey, I don't have any issues with traction. I'm going to move things forward. Now, when you turn the wheel, getting on a highway ramp, getting around a corner, those kind of things, it's going to also proactively move traction to the rear wheels because, hey, we don't know if we're switching onto a road with less traction. We don't know if we're moving onto a road that's snow covered. Maybe there's some puddles. Maybe just that braking force and the acceleration force. We got to make sure that we move that power to the rear wheel. So it's going to move that power back as you start turning the wheel. And those are all things to keep in mind because as it moves that power to the back, you've now got a true all-wheel drive system. So when you go to accelerate, you're going to have all the power there. When you're going around that highway ramp, you're going to have power moving around just because you're steering. And it does it seamlessly, and that's what you want. If you have a system that reacts to a problem, like I said, all that's going to do is when the front wheel starts slipping, the rear wheels are just going to push you further off course or get you further stuck. So that's the basic system. We used to call the system in the Sportage the Dynamax all-wheel drive system. Dynamax was made by Magna International along with Kia, and Magna International is a Canadian company. That Canadian company is designing this system for all-weather traction. Now, they've moved away from that brand name in the Seltos, the K5, and the Telluride. These all have a little bit different all-wheel drive systems. But these cars were all designed with the same theory in mind. They are an all-weather, all-traction system. So let's talk again real quickly about another system that's out there where sometimes people think it's good. I used to own a Jeep Wrangler. A Jeep Wrangler, I believe up until now, still at some point they will change their system, but at least up until now, for sure up until last year or so, a Jeep Wrangler or some pickup truck systems, they have a 4x4 system. Here's the problem with a 4x4 system. The front wheels and rear wheels are locked to the same speed when you're in 4x4. When you are in 4x4 on a pickup truck or something like a Jeep Wrangler, like I used to have, great vehicle, then what happens is when you go around a corner, the front wheels take a different length circle than the rear wheels, and you can have some driveline binding. So what you want to look for in, for instance, I have a pickup truck as well. My pickup truck has an all-wheel drive setting and it has a 4x4 setting. You want that all-wheel drive setting if you're buying that 4x4 system to work on snowy roads, because we all know when we drive on snowy roads, sometimes it's fully clear and all of a sudden it's snow covered and then it's fully clear again. Even just driving straight, the bumps in the road, those wheels are taking a little bit different. One's going a little bit further, a little bit shorter than the other one. If you turn it all, and you can have driveline bind. So that's a system where an all-wheel drive system can take care of that, whereas a 4x4 system cannot. So let's talk about that as we jump inside the Seltos now and we show you some of the features in here. Inside the Kia Seltos, a couple things I want to show you. Just going to turn the car to the on position. What's cool about Kias is if you don't believe the system works or you want to see how it works, you can skip across to here and you can see the system work. Those are bar graphs. These are, let me ask the question. So if a 4x4 is 50-50 and all-wheel drive is 90-10? No. So that's a good question. A 4x4 system is a 50-50, and it's what we call a 50-50 lock. So you can see here, I can put all of the power to the front wheels. These would be bar graphs. Let me just zoom in for a second. These are bar graphs. They're grayed out right now. If all the power was to the front wheels, every bar graph up top on the front would be in white instead of gray. When you start driving here, you'll see that the vehicle, and you know what? We'll just start the car for a quick second and put it in drive, and you'll see exactly what I mean. This is going to gas out the people in the building, but that's okay. Put the car in drive. There we go. They're red in this car. So see how it's got 50%, maybe 30% of the power to the rear wheels already before I even go? All I do is put it in drive. Let me just turn the car off again. We'll get it back to that spot in a second. I just don't want to gas out the people in the offices behind me. A 4x4 system equally puts the power front and rear, but it locks that power front and rear. So this one, you can see those red lines could fill out and you can see what you did. So when you're driving this car, you can see that the power is already in the rear. Maybe 30%, 40% of the power is already at the rear and 60 or so percent is in the front. That is the default position. And then of course it'll back off. Now this car, the Sportage, the now Sportage Sportage, whatever you want to call it, if you're American, Sportage, or the Sorento or the Seltos, we have this button here, a 4x4 lock button. What that does is it locks the power front and rear at 50%. Now, we always say if you're completely stuck in snow, that's a good spot to use it. The other spot to use it is in, for instance, mud, especially mud. It works well because you can allow that all four wheels to work together, spinning at exactly the same rate. and that works great. Now, when I turn around a corner, you guys all know if you look at the tire tracks of a car, the rear wheels don't follow the front wheels. The rear wheels take a shortcut around the corner compared to the front wheels. So if you go around a corner, having all four wheels spin at exactly the same speed, you have driveline bind. If you've ever driven a Jeep Wrangler in locked in four-wheel drive or something like that, you will see the wheels kind of skip, or you will feel the driveline make some grunts and groans. You can hear that a little bit in this car if you have it in 4x4 lock. So what this car does is it's intelligent. If you lock it in because you want it that way and you steer really sharply to the right or to the left, what that does is it takes the power away from the rear wheels. It turns off that lock and allows the power to move a little bit so that you can have a different arc in the front wheels and rear. Is it torque vectoring? No, that's different. We'll get to that as well. Great question. So in that four-wheel drive lock on a Kia car, if you go above 30 kilometers an hour or you turn sharply, it will unlock the front and the rear. It's a system that for most non-off-roading systems, you don't really need. If you're off-roading, it is useful to lock all four wheels together to get you unstuck, or if you're rock climbing or something like that. We don't have rock climbers. We don't really go deep off-roading. So in most cases, you do not need to use this button. What that means is in the Kia Seltos, you need to let the system do the thinking for you. Don't outsmart it, and you will find that you have tremendously good traction in the on driving in snowy roads. Now, let's jump across here because the Seltos has the same, the K5 has a similar system to the Seltos. So to answer that torque vectoring question, great question. What is torque vectoring? Torque vectoring transfers power between usually the rear wheels, left and right. So what we do is we move front to back. We do not move left and right on this car. Now on the Stinger, I'm almost positive, in fact, I'm pretty sure, it has torque vectoring, which can move it left and right. Torque vectoring is a performance all-wheel drive system. It is useful on dry pavement. If you're going around a corner and you're really sharp turn, the car's banking one way or the other. Some wheels out front will have less traction because if you're going around this corner this way, the car is banking. The front left wheel may have less traction, so you can put extra power, extra torque to the rear. Front left wheel loses traction, the rear right wheel you can give traction to, and that will push you through the corner, keep you turning. Torque vectoring is not as useful in the snow as it is on a performance car on the track. So again, we just saw the Seltos. Now we've got the K5. The K5 is a very similar system. Same thing. It's going to start with the power in the rear and the power in the front. It's going to move power forward as it sees that we're maintaining traction. Now here's the difference in the K5. We do not have that 4x4 lock button. Why don't we have it? Because as much as it can be used in snow if you're completely stuck, it's not really that useful for anything in snow. And the K5, of course, with a little bit less ground clearance, is not going to be going off-road. What we do have in the K5, though, which is all new, let me zoom into the main screen here because that's probably the best place to show you. Let's just get rid of this because I'm not sure if it works. My Instagram label's blowing around. All right. What we do have in the K5 are drive modes, and you can actually, let's show them in here. Let me zoom in there. There we go. I'll zoom in a little closer. Whoops. Okay, so in the center here, drive modes, you have smart, you have normal, you have sport, you have custom, and you have a snow mode. Now, the snow mode is actually called in the center here. Let me just go back to that. Look at the screen when I go there. Very top of that screen says drive mode custom terrain mode. So it changes. One of the drive modes is a terrain mode, and it is optimized for snow or slippery roads. So in addition to having an all-wheel drive system that can move the power front to rear, and I can show you again in this system here, right over here. Nope, sorry, right over here. Right there, same bar graph type design on this car. You will see the traction moving front to rear when you're driving. In addition to having that, you also have a drive mode that works with snow. And what that does is it can change the way the car applies power, the way the throttle works, the way the shift points work to optimize traction from the powertrain, not just the all-wheel drive system. So that's what the snow mode in a K5 does. Again, you lose that ability to lock the system, which practically speaking is not something you need in snow. It might be something you need in mud or sticky situations off-road. It's not something that's super practical in snow, as practical as something like a snow mode. So the drive mode moves into a terrain mode. On both of these two cars, the all-wheel drive system, essentially above 30 kilometers an hour, becomes less active. And that's because once you get moving out of snow, You having a front wheel drive bias is great. Now it can move the power at any point when it needs to move power, but basically once you get about 30 kilometers an hour, what you're generally looking for in a car like this is fuel efficiency. That's why the modern all-wheel drive system does not get terrible fuel efficiency. If you look at this mid-sized car, the fuel efficiency numbers are right here. Averages 9.2 on the high city and 6.9 in the highway. Those are phenomenal mileage numbers. 6.9 used to be economy car highway mileage, and now you're talking about a mid-sized car. It's only 3 inches shorter than the Telluride, which is a full-size SUV, but you've got an all-wheel drive system on here. So now you can get all-wheel drive with great fuel efficiency, and that snow mode works with the drivetrain and the all-wheel drive to give you great traction. So keep in mind, again, all of those wheel speed sensors, they sense, hey, snow mode, okay, we're going to react differently now with our ABS system, with our traction control system, with our vehicle stability control system, with our all-wheel drive system. We can control all those electronically, and that's one of the great features. Now, we're going to move over here to the Telluride for a second. The Telluride has a different system again. It does not have a four-wheel drive lock button, but it still locks the four-wheel drive. When it locks the four-wheel drive, it actually locks it up to about 60 kilometers an hour. So we understand that this vehicle may be used more for a true off-road environment, whereas the other ones are probably going to be more dirt road with some mud puddles and probably more on-road without a whole lot of real difficult terrain in this car. So again, backing up over here, something like the Sportage, or Sportage if you're American, and the Seltos and the Sorento, they're dirt road with some muddy spots and some not great spots. Over on this car, basically on road, no real true off road, but you are going to run into the weather of all road, whether it's wet weather, whether that's snowy weather, or even dry roads. On this vehicle, a little bit more off-road centric. Now, in the United States, you guys have a different system. Maybe that's changed for 2021 in the States, but when this car launched in the States, you had a different system than we do in Canada. Let me show you that system in Canada. So Telluride doesn't have that lock feature. What does it have? Exactly. Let's talk about that. So it doesn't have the lock button, but it still locks the system. Now, the other cars, that four-wheel drive lock button turns off at 30 kilometers an hour. This car turns, you have drive modes here, Comfort, Eco, Sport, and Smart. So no snow mode in the drive modes, but we switch to terrain mode, and now you've got snow. Let me just turn the climate system off for a second, guys. There we go. Now you've got the snow mode there, the mud mode, and the sand mode. In the mud and sand mode, you have those 4x4 lock features, and they work up to 60 kilometers an hour in the Telluride. It's 30 kilometers an hour in the other vehicles. So you don't want to drive on dry pavement in the sand mode or the mud mode. Now, the car is pretty smart. It'll sense what you're doing. But again, you may hear some driveline bind. It's completely normal. All four wheels are locked together. If you're turning at all, the front wheels are taking a longer circle than the rear wheels, and that means that you're going to see some binding, whether that's tire skipping, tire hopping, or it's going to be or you're going to have the driveline itself binding a little bit. It's totally normal. You don't want to drive on dry pavement in the sand mode or the mud mode. In the snow mode, you can. And again, same idea as the K5. You've now got both of your all-wheel drive system and your drive mode. So your throttle, your what do you call it? Throttle, gear shift points. They are all geared for slippery roads, snowy roads, to try to maintain traction. They can dull the throttle a little bit, keep you from skidding out right away. And again, you throw winter tires on this car, it's virtually unstoppable. So those are the little ways to get around things. Mud and sand mode, again, up to 60 kilometers an hour, you can keep it four-wheel drive lock. Now, what happens if I'm driving this car? This is one of my big pet peeves about a lot of these cars that are competitor stars. Let me jump out of here for a second. A lot of our competitors require you to put the car into a snow mode for snow or a terrain mode for something else. What happens if you're driving the Telluride, the K5, or the Seltos, let's just say Telluride K5, and you don't put it into snow mode? Guess what? You're totally fine. You're totally fine. The all-wheel drive system in both of these cars are smart. They're going to work with you. They're constantly monitoring to be proactive in the traction. And that's where you see the real difference. Because in my mind, when you're driving down the road and all of a sudden the weather changes and it gets bad, the last thing you want to do is hit around for drive modes or hit around for buttons and knobs and things and try to make sure you're in the right mode. Because these are proactive systems, you're always starting from a stop with, a good amount of power in the rear wheels. You're always going around a corner. It's got power in the rear wheels. You're always doing all the areas where you may lose some traction. The car is already pre-set up to keep traction. All the snow mode does is change the drive mode as well to also complement. So in other words, change the gear shift points, work with the throttle to maybe soften it just a tiny bit, and that allows you to keep traction. So that just gives you an extra benefit. But all of these cars, if you hit no drive modes at all, you're going to find that the all-wheel drive system is already pre-ready to go. It'll handle that snowy weather. It'll handle that whatever wet roads, leaves on the road. It'll handle all those things already. All that they do is they also combine the drive mode with the all-wheel drive system, and that's how you get traction. So I know this has not been the most exciting video I've ever done. Let's take a look if there's any other questions that I missed. This is definitely Kia 101. If there's any questions I missed. So how it's snowy in Canada, some people now they get winter tire equipped on the vehicle. Okay, so winter tires, let's just talk about that. If you are buying a car with us, yeah, Brantford Kia University, exactly. There's such a thing as Kia University, by the way. If you're buying a car right now, so what I suggest, whether you're buying an all-wheel drive car or not, do yourself a favor, buy the snow tires with the car. We've got packages made up. You can get alloy rims or just steel rims. Steel rims are, of course, less expensive. Alloy rims or steel rims you can get, but we can sell you those tires and rims with the car, which means they can be added onto your monthly payment, and you don't have this huge expense when you get winter tires for the winter. We can store them for you here. We can do all those things. We can swap them, do that kind of stuff. Makes things simple that way for you, makes things simple for everybody. But if you're getting those winter tires, and keep in mind, the reason I recommend winter tires, a lot of people say, oh, it's okay. I've got all-wheel drive. I don't need it. And of course, the typical argument is, well, all-wheel drive only gets you going, but you need winter tires to also stop. Great argument. It's also slightly outdated. The real reason you need winter tires on an all-wheel drive car is if you're buying all-wheel drive for traction, the level of traction you can get with the advanced computer systems in the all-wheel drive system and in the drive modes is night and day difference when you give yourself just that little bit of extra traction. That's when you really see the difference. So a lot of people are really impressed. They say, wow, these cars, when I put snow tires on, they're just so much different. It's not actually the tires that are that much better. I mean, they are that much better, but it's the advanced electronics. So when we took the Seltos out in that snowy airport parking lot, we drove way too fast. We slammed it into corners, and the Seltos' all-wheel drive system pivoted that car on the center. So when we cranked the steering wheel to the left, the car didn't understeer into a wall. Excuse me, guys. Got a little something in my throat. But the car didn't slide into a wall. What it did is, because of the traction control and the all-wheel drive system, it would pivot on the center. So when we wanted it to go left, it would turn left. It wouldn't slide forward or slide out like a typical front-wheel drive nose-heavy car would do. And again, that's not just the all-wheel drive system. That's all of the electronics, the traction controls, stability controls, traction controls that work with these systems. Now, the other thing to keep in mind with winter tires, if you're talking about all-wheel drive traction, every one of these vehicles is equipped with a collision avoidance system. It can see things like pedestrians and cyclists and also vehicles in front of you. And if you're not paying attention, all three of these vehicles are capable of stopping. If you're not paying attention and you have winter tires on in bad weather, these cars are going to minimize a collision a lot more if they have some traction with winter tires. They wait and they wait and they wait and they wait and they emergency brake. In dry weather, it's capable of avoiding the collision. If you're on poor traction, the difference can be literally life and death between slowing the vehicle down and having a minor crash or slowing the vehicle down and having a complete crash. So all-wheel drive or winter tires are very important to keep in mind with that. One little thing you're going to find with some of these collision avoidance systems, all of these cars have a radar plate on the front. This is not just a Kia thing. That is what that is right there. This car now has the radar plate down here like that. There's another one right here on the Telluride, down here like that. Those radar plates are for smart cruise control. That's the feature that you often talk about when you're talking to a salesperson. What they also do, though, is they can be used for that forward collision avoidance. They have cameras out front as well. Every one of these vehicles has a camera out front. That camera out front is the lane follow assist camera. It can see the lane markers, but it as well is part of your forward collision avoidance system. So when you run your windshield wipers, the cameras are clear. If they get streaky and that camera gets blocked, you're going to see a forward collision warning thing with a system warning saying something's not right. So that's why you need good windshield wipers on the front. You also, if you have a slush buildup on those radar plates, you may also see a forward collision warning come on. And what you do is just clear that little bit of slush from that radar plate, and that forward collision warning system will disappear. That, again, is a system that is designed to help you avoid collisions. It's not the end of the world if it comes on in a snowy, slushy driving situation. It just means that you're on your own. You got to hit your brakes yourself. Don't wait for the car to do it, which, of course, you should never do. I always say test those systems like you test airbags. You don't test them until you need them. But that is something to keep in mind with these forward collision cars and all-weather traction, all-weather cars. So there's half an hour. I think I've bored everybody to tears, but I feel like we've covered everything. What are my thoughts on all-weather tires? I don't have a ton of thoughts. I know that there's a lot of customers that like all-weather tires. So just so everybody knows what we're talking about, all-season tires are great tires for 3 seasons in Canada. A lot of the Americans can get away with an all-season tire all the year round. But in Canada, all season tires are great for 3 seasons. You need winter tires in the winter weather. All weather tires have extra snow capability, but they don't need to be swapped out. I'm not totally sure about the long term durability. I haven't really studied them. I feel like there might be some issues. It is certainly an economical way for some people to go to save them from storing tires, which of course we can do for you here. It's something that I think is interesting. As far as I know, there's not a manufacturer out there that has put all weather tires on their car as standard equipment instead of all season tires. I do think sometimes when you get into a little bit of a compromised tire, you give up a little bit of everything. My big issue with all weather tires is a lot of the all season tires that are coming on our cars right now are good for fuel efficiency in 3 seasons of the year. And let's face it, in Canada, we have 3 pretty good seasons for driving. And to me, you would sacrifice potentially some grip for 3 seasons to gain a little bit of grip for 1 season. I think they're pretty good in the winter, from what I've heard, but they don't strike me as something that I would do for my cars just yet. But I think that technology is coming now. Where they make a ton of sense is if you are in Quebec, for instance, and you travel to Florida or something like that. In Quebec, snow tires are mandated. They are you have to have snow tires by law by certain times of year. And let's say you're a snowbird, you travel to Florida for the winter. Well, now what do? Do you swap tires halfway down to Florida? Do you swap them on the way back? So that's where they make a ton of sense. But to me, they're interesting, but I don't know if they're there yet for me. I personally am not sold on them yet. I could be convinced though. Telluride's riding a bit rough with the 20-inch tires. Could it be the tire pressure, which is at 35? Could be tire pressure. Yeah, check tire pressure. Make sure it's what it's supposed to be. Yeah, I don't have anything else. If you feel a concern, then I would call your local service department. Make sure they have a look at it. Make sure it's riding normal. Make sure everything's functioning normal. Um, Somewhere, could you show us some of the snow tires and what they look like? I could. I didn't bring any into the bay today, but we can certainly bring some into the bay tomorrow. Big difference again with snow tires. There is a different tread pattern for sure. Lots more siping in them, so that's a lot more of these. Snow tire compared to an all-season tire will have a lot more of these little fine lines. Like instead of having one through here, you might see 2 or 3 in that tread block, and they often are a little bit more jagged in there. A little bit deeper tread usually. Snow tire has deeper tread, and the tire compound is much softer. So that's a big thing there. So there we go. The other thing to keep in mind, speaking of winter tires, sometimes your insurance company can help you with that. Da, 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 da. How many kilometers or years are winter tires good for? Really depends on the make. Some are lasting longer than others. I've never had an issue getting 3 to 4 years. I've tended most of my cars I've sold before I've had a 4th year on there. Working at a car dealer, sometimes you sell cars a lot. So I'm not the best judge of that. It really depends on how you drive and which brand you get. There are good tire review sites online that you can use to sort of get a sense of what's good. Um, yeah, after 4 seasons. Yeah, so the best thing to do is just use a tire review site. I'm not an expert on which brand is best, but there is good data out there on which tires are good for which cars and which ones last a long time. So there we go. Is there anything else I missed up there? Is there a question that I may have missed earlier that you want to ask? I'm happy to answer. Again, sort of a different video for us, but Kia School 101. 20 of you are still on. I appreciate that. 16 of you have said, hey, give it a like. I did a little research for this video, so I'm hoping 4 more likes are out there for me to grab. If you want to hit like button, that helps us out. We do plan to do an interesting thing. We have this big open lot over here now. So one thing we're going to do is we are going to take a front-wheel drive and a 4-wheel drive, or front-wheel drive and an all-wheel drive, something like a Kia Seltos or a Sportage or something like that, and we're going to run them up and down here in the snow and compare all-wheel drive versus front-wheel drive, and then we're going to do all-wheel drive versus front-wheel drive with winter tires on the front-wheel drive, And then we're going to talk about braking with the winter tires and that kind of thing. So you're going to be able to see our systems work if we have the right kind of snowy days and they let us goof off for the day. We do have that planned. We just need the right weather, and we need to be able to have that side lot snow covered the whole time. So we need a good amount of snow. So when that happens, we'll make that video for you, and that'll be coming. In the meantime, I think that's where we're going to leave it. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and have a great weekend. Happy Halloween to those who are celebrating, and be safe. Mask up with more than just your costume. And yeah, we will talk to you again on Monday. Thanks for joining us, everyone.